Another well-known model, but not quite as iconic compared to most of the others. It is SBL00 Frappe, with the kit of Cooler, Double Freeze, Tank Legs, and the leg ability of Snow type, which grants S rank on snowy terrain, in addition to the leg standard matches. Now, as a tank-based leg, I do tend to grade them rather harshly to a point, but thanks to the passive damage reduction that they have, as well as a very nice extra slew of perks that come with them, this one honestly is definitely one of the better ones compared to most other tank legs that you'll see. And in addition to this, because Frappe is a 2-star model, she is available in all gacha banners and part of the permanent pool, which means that you don't really have to try going for her, because as you make pulls in other banners, she essentially will come on her own, whether you want her to or not. Cooler is a support-based skill that, once activated, will buff the cooldown stat of herself and all allies by 20% or so, which means that after they take their turn on the center line, they will run back to start just a little bit faster than normal so that you can give them their next order to continue the game. Right and left arm of freeze are ailment-based skills, and arguably one of the better of the ailments that we have in our arsenal, given that it not only stops enemies cold, pun intended, but it also guarantees that all hits will land, and all hits will be critical hits as long as they remain frozen. The only real weakness to freeze in this case is, of course, anyone using, say, Perfect Guard to nullify it, Counter Guard, since it is a melee skill, or anyone that has used Stat Cleanse to nullify ailments. At this point, much of Frappe's overall viability does very largely reduce, given that freezing opponents and stop and paralyzing them is kind of her main go-to and the point she's on the field to begin with. Now, when it comes to tank legs, as mentioned, I do tend to grade them somewhat harshly, but Frappe's legs in particular are definitely one of the better ones for a number of reasons. The first of which is because the passive buff the passive damage reduction that tanks get means that she's already going to be mitigating about 30% of incoming damage off the top just for having her leg equipped. Of course, at the cost that she can't dodge, and her mobility is honestly very, very low. But of course, as a tank leg, she does make up for it very nicely with higher resist stats to keep the damage down. In addition to this, the leg ability of Snow type gives her an additional advantage that not a lot of bots see very often, if at all, and that's the fact that on snowy terrains, which realistically no one really has advantage on, aside from, of course, float legs, Frappe is going to be going just a little bit faster across a snowy terrain in comparison to even biped legs or sea legs or even flight legs or float legs, because she's going to be playing at S rank, which means she's going to be getting a 20% bonus to all of her leg stats, minus of course armor and heavy limit, just for using her legs on that particular terrain. That being said though, as a pure set score, I do unfortunately have to rate Frappe at a very solid 4.5 out of 10. Because even though that she is very good at what she does, she can be moderately niche to a point, and there are a lot of very easy ways to overcome or counter her to make her essentially useless on the battlefield. Such examples include, again, someone with, say, melee guard that can basically make her attacks null and void, or anyone that uses Stat Cleanse, which means even though that she can deal damage, she won't be able to stop you cold and make it easier for herself or an ally to finish the job. But despite that, she still does have a pretty solid chunk of stats across the board, good damage reduction, very good leg ability on a tank leg no less. And as mixed parts, I do have to rate her much, much higher at an 8 out of 10. Given that even though you may not use Cooler super often, and having freeze on both arms may be somewhat redundant to a point, especially if an ailment is negated or melee attacks aren't negated, if you perhaps mix it up a little bit to, say, use one of her arms or on either point, that does definitely boost a lot of her overall viability or possibility in competitive meta, given that you can use it just about anywhere. And like I mentioned, her tank legs, even though I grade them somewhat harshly, is definitely one of the better few, given that she's going to be fighting with a terrain that she's going to have an additional S rank on, where all other tank types across the board will only have B rank.